Hello everyone and welcome to Fright Night. Are you ready for a scary story? A young healthcare professional assigned to a patient in a remote forest home, a night of terrifying phone calls, and a twist that's lived on in American folklore for generations. This is my own spin on one of the most famous urban legends in existence. Are you ready to hear the tale of the caregiver? Jasmine rested her head on the edge of the door as she watched the landscape speed past through the taxicab's window. The sun was low in the sky, and despite a growing darkness, her mind was wide awake. Months of graveyard shift training had her sleeping from morning until afternoon, and now she felt like more of a creature of the night than the vampires and werewolves in the horror movies she so enjoyed. The drive had already taken about 30 minutes, and according to the driver, she was looking at 20 more. As a caregiver, this was a long commute, and she usually stayed away from anything outside of the city, but this particular job was offering ridiculous compensation, and as a young woman in this current economy, she just couldn't pass it up. As the sun dropped below the horizon, the cab turned off the main road and headed down what was either a forest route or a driveway that cut directly through the trees. And after a minute or two, it rounded a circular drive and came to a stop outside of a looming old home. "Here we are," said the cabbie. "Do you need any help with your bag, ma'am?" "No thanks," said Jasmine, eyeballing the weathered abode while reaching into her purse for a tip. "Thanks so much for the ride." She exited the vehicle and ascended the front stairs to the porch, where she was greeted by an elderly man in servant's attire. "Greetings," welcomed the servant coldly. "You must be the new caretaker, yes?" "I am," smiled Jasmine. "I'm here for Mr. Johnson?" "Indeed," replied the servant, gesturing towards the front door. "Right this way." The man led Jasmine through the door into a long hallway with stairs at the end. He showed her the kitchen, which was to the left, then the living room to the right, and afterwards, she was guided through the dining room, library, guest rooms, and finally up the stairway, which opened into another hallway lined with doors. "All of these are additional bedrooms or studies. You don't need to enter them," he explained. "Mr. Johnson, or Cyrus, always stays through that door at the end of the hall." He led her down the hall and opened the door to Mr. Johnson's room. Beyond was a hospital bed holding Mr. Johnson, who was surrounded by various medical devices which produced small whirs and steady beeps. "Cyrus is completely incapacitated," explained the servant. "Now, we have a remote monitor downstairs as well, so aside from changing his bags, you can check on him from the comfort of the living room if you'd like." "Understood," confirmed Jasmine. "Beyond that," continued the servant, "you're welcome to use the kitchen and help yourself to whatever food you might want. The living room is full of some good books, and that path through the back garden is a good place to get some air if you feel too confined. Just don't forget the monitor if you step outside." Now, as you're probably already aware, caregivers looking after Cyrus are not permitted to drink on the job, and absolutely no company to the house. Is that all clear? "Absolutely," answered Jasmine instantly. "I'd never do anything to jeopardize my position with you." "Excellent," said the servant. "Then my shift is up. You'll be alone out here until 6 a.m. Have a good shift." With that, the man walked Jasmine downstairs, provided her with the mobile monitor, and exited through the front door. At first, Jasmine didn't know what to do with herself. This house was so big, and it seemed like this gig would be mostly just finding ways to pass the time. She started by exploring the bottom floor. It was beautiful. The woodwork, furniture, art, and artifacts felt as if they were something out of a movie or from another era. Next, she sat on the couch and opened a random book, reading for a few minutes. But just as she had started to become interested in this book, a piercing noise broke her concentration and caused her to jump in her seat. It was an old phone on the end table next to the couch she was sitting on. She composed herself, scooted across the couch, and put the receiver to her ear. "Johnson Residence," she said cheerily, and then, after a moment of silence, "Johnson Residence, Jasmine speaking, hello?" She waited another minute in complete quiet, and though there was never any response, Jasmine was overcome with the unnerving feeling that someone was on the other end of this mystery call, waiting, just listening to her. A chill ran through her body, and she hung the phone up. It was probably just a wrong number, she thought. If it was important, they'll call back. She opened her book back up and tried to continue reading, but her mind was racing. After several failed attempts, she set the book down and made her way over to an old record player. Several of the records next to the player were oldies that she actually liked, so she selected one, placed it in the player, set the needle, and began to dance around the living room to lighten the mood. Once more, however, just as she was getting comfortable, the phone rang. and it was so loud it easily overpowered the music. Jasmine stopped the record and picked the phone up, placing the receiver to her ear, and again, she was met with nothing but silence. "Johnson residence," she demanded. "Hello? Hello? Is somebody there?" Nothing but silence. Before an irritated Jasmine could hang up this time, however, she detected a sound. It was so small at first that she almost didn't notice it, but it was familiar, rhythmic. It was breathing. But it sounded like whoever was on the other end of the call was trying to keep their breath as quiet as possible, and that revelation definitely creeped her out. "Hey," stated Jasmine firmly, "I can hear you breathing. I don't know if this is a prank call or what, but it's not funny. If you call again, I'm contacting the police." And after a moment, Jasmine hung the phone up with a shudder. She glanced around the room at the large windows that framed it. It was so dark outside that she could see virtually nothing past the glass. They were like large obsidian mirrors, and anyone or anything could be standing just beyond them. "No," she stopped herself, "they're just prank calls, and this is exactly what the prankster wants." Jasmine composed herself once again and made her way upstairs and back to Mr. Johnson's room. His monitors all read normal. She returned downstairs and headed to the kitchen to get a glass of water. However, just as she went to pour the water, the phone rang again, startling her and causing her to drop the glass with a crash into the sink. She approached the phone slowly, picked it up, and placed the receiver to her ear. "Hello?" she started. She was met with only heavy breathing in return. "Hello? Hello?" she half shouted. "This isn't funny. Who is this?" Then suddenly, unexpectedly, a voice came through the phone. It was male, low, deep, and raspy. "Hello, Jasmine," it said tauntingly, and then it let out a sinister laugh. "I'm watching you." Jasmine slammed the phone back onto its hook. She was officially panicked. She paced and thought for a moment, and after a short while, she lifted the phone again and dialed 3 numbers, 911. It rang for only a second before a man answered. "911, what's your emergency?" came a stern voice. "Yeah, hi," began Jasmine. "I'm sorry. I don't know if this is really an emergency, but I don't know who else to call." "That's okay, ma'am," continued the voice. "Are you in any danger?" I tried Jasmine. "Honestly, I don't know. I'm caretaking out at the old Johnson residence, and I keep getting these strange calls. At first, it was just breathing, but the last time, whoever it was that called, they knew my name." "It's probably just a prankster trying to get a thrill," said the officer, yet she detected a bit of concern in his voice. "Is there anyone you know that might want to prank you?" "Oh no," answered Jasmine. "No way. My friends are all way too mature. Is there anything else you can do? I don't know, maybe check the premises or something?" "Well," he started, "I can't send an officer all the way out there without a real emergency. But hang on, let me try something. Do you mind if I call you back in just a little while?" "Not at all," answered Jasmine. "That's perfectly fine. Thank you for your help." She disconnected the call and waited. Her senses were on hyper alert. She could hear a bird chirping in the tree outside, a clock that was ticking somewhere else in the house, but neither were sounds she was concerned about. She timidly picked up the book she'd started earlier and tried to get interested again, but she was far too distracted and anxious. Finally, the phone rang and she immediately answered it. "Hi, officer," she began, but before she could say another word, a familiar voice cut her off. "Hello, Jasmine," said the mystery caller. "Look, I just called the cops," shouted Jasmine. "They know where I am. You need to leave me the hell alone." There was a brief moment of silence filled with heavy breathing. Then the voice spoke again. "Do you know what's going to be funny?" it asked Jasmine. "When I gut you like a pig before the police can ever get here." Jasmine slammed the phone down again, crying, but as soon as it hit the hook, it was already ringing. She picked up the phone defeated and was again greeted by the voice. "Don't you hang up on me again," it screamed maniacally. "I swear to God, I'll kill—" Before the sentence was finished, Jasmine hung the phone up once more, but like clockwork, it rang as soon as it touched the hook. She picked it up and screamed, "No more! No more! Please, leave me alone! Please!" But to Jasmine's surprise, the voice of the officer she'd spoken with earlier replied. Jasmine, he said, trying to snap her out of her panic. "Stop. You need to listen to me right now. I had a hunch you weren't lying, so I traced the line that you contacted me from. I'm on my way to your location right now, but you need to run. The calls are coming from inside of the house." Time seemed to slow to a crawl while Jasmine absorbed what the officer was telling her. She turned and sprinted towards the door, but just as she grabbed the handle, she remembered something that froze her in her tracks. Mr. Johnson was upstairs alone, defenseless. She couldn't just leave him there. She made a 180-degree turn and sprinted up the stairs, down the hall, and into Mr. Johnson's room, where she shut and locked the door. The monitors told her Mr. Johnson's vitals were all stable. She quickly dimmed the lights and hunkered down next to the door, listening carefully. Suddenly, she heard a sound. It was the commotion of Mr. Johnson's monitors flatlining. She spun around and squinted through the darkness, where to her surprise, she found the hospital bed completely empty. Before Jasmine could comprehend what had happened, she heard a low, familiar, sinister voice from right behind her. The same voice from the phone, one that had belonged to Mr. Johnson all along. And it said, "I bet you didn't see this one coming," just before a knife was plunged through her lower spine. Well guys, did that one get ya? For those of you who are urban legend aficionados, you probably recognized my story from its original form, being, you guessed it, the babysitter and the man upstairs. Now, full disclosure before we discuss history and facts surrounding this one, this rendition is entirely mine, so for the sake of discussion, and for those unaware, the original legend tells of a young girl hired by a family to watch a child or children in their house either in the countryside or in a quiet neighborhood, after which, this babysitter gets a series of threatening calls, resulting in her contacting the police and learning that the calls are actually coming from inside the house. There are many renditions of this version of the story that involve the babysitter dying, the kids dying, both parties dying, or everyone living but just barely surviving by the skin of their teeth. This story has been told so many times, in fact, that when I was young, all of my friends were wise to it, so I decided to replace the babysitter with a caretaker, and the kids who are in danger with an old man who isn't really in danger at all, but as it turns out in the end, is actually the killer. So where did this fearsome fable come from, and is there any truth to it? Opposite from some of the other urban legends I've covered in the past, the history behind this one intertwines with truth. While it's speculated the creation of this legend dates back to the 1940s or 50s, the chilling part that's unclear is whether or not it predated or postdated the brutal murder of babysitter Jeanette Christman in Columbia, Missouri through March of 1950. On the 18th, Jeanette took a babysitting gig with some of her favorite regulars, Ed and Ann Romack, and their 3-year-old son, Gregory. Disturbingly, at around 10:35 at night, and just as local deputies were settling in for the evening, their station phone rang, and through it, a young girl screamed for help before the line abruptly went dead. Unfortunately, the local switchboard had already closed for the night, and with no way to trace the call, all police could do was wait and worry. The Romacks would return home around 1:30 in the morning, and it was Ed who would walk in on a horrifying scene, being the body of young Jeanette, which had visibly been beaten, assaulted, and strangled to death. While it's strongly suspected one Robert Mueller was responsible for the crime, because of mistakes in the investigation, he was eventually set free and no charges were ever pressed against him. Through the 1960s, the story of the babysitter and the man upstairs would grow amongst the ranks of urban legends, and it would be twisted to involve phone calls to throw the reader off, while the ending twist would reveal the calls had been coming from inside of the house the entire time, for one hell of a chill. And from the 60s through the 70s, different variations would emerge, some that were kid-friendly and others that were brutally violent. Also through the 70s, this story would earn massive infamy following its featuring in a number of television productions, including Foster's Release, Fright, The Severed Arm, and of course, When a Stranger Calls, which was released in 1979, just 2 years before its featuring in Master of Urban Legends Jan Harold Brunvaughn's The Vanishing Hitchhiker, American Urban Legends and Their Meanings. While the tale continued to spread through the 1980s and 90s, it was mostly popular by word of mouth, and while some had heard it before, most had not. However, in 1993, a sequel to the aforementioned film, which was called When a Stranger Calls Back, was released, respurring interest. And in 2006, a remake of the classic When a Stranger Calls was released, amidst a host of inclusions in smaller anthologies, storybooks, and the like. Now guys, I think it's important to note here that while there was interest, neither the original movie, sequel, nor remake did very well overall. but not necessarily due to ratings. Rather, like the urban legend itself, it was really only popular with a much smaller crowd, namely amongst those who had heard the story before. And honestly, that ambiance and mystique really only make it a stronger, scary story. In the present, the babysitter tale continues to spread on social media websites such as Reddit, Snopes, and yes, even YouTube, and it continues to play a critical role in American folklore and the genre that is urban legends as a whole. So what do you do if you're offered a remote babysitting job that runs late into the night? Make sure you check the house with your employers before they depart. Lock up all of the doors and windows for safety, and if the phone rings, pray you're alone, because you never really know who could be lurking upstairs in the dark.